Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today in this episode, I talked with Jeff Garmire, who is one of the most accomplished hikers, trail runners, and unsupported FKT individuals in the world, and it was phenomenal. I don't want to give too much away here, but Jeff is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of story. Really appreciate him coming on. This last year, he set the John Muir Trail fastest known time for unsupported. In 2020, he set the record for the Colorado Trail, but he's also a Triple Crown hiker, an accomplished publicist, and much, much more. So dive into this conversation with us. It truly was a lot of fun, and there is a lot of information to be gathered and just some fun stories along the way. Before I turn that on, though, just wanted to give you guys another reminder to join the 100-mile challenge. This is one of the best things we do here at Outdoor Vitals. It's a great time, and I really believe that it can change your life and just help you set a big goal and go accomplish something truly worthwhile this year. So go check out the 100-mile challenge. It's a blast. We literally run this thing at our own costs because we think it's just that worthwhile and us helping you connect with the vital outdoors. All right, let's jump into my interview with Jeff Garmire. All right, Jeff, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. You have one of the biggest, I don't know if you call it like a portfolio of hikes and FKTs and all sorts of things that I was digging through as in preparations for this. That's going to be very interesting to dive through and just to hear from you and get your perspective on a lot of this stuff. So I'm very excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, where are you based out of right now?
I live in Bozeman, Montana, so we're super cold up here in the winter.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at like your resume, I guess I'll say, of your hikes here, and I mean, it seems like you've got to be training year round to just stay in the physical condition to do this. So, do you just go out when it's freezing cold and just train all winter, or what's the secrets there?
Yeah, right before this, I had like a free hour, so I went on a 5.5-mile run and then just hustled to hop on this. So it's usually waiting till the warmer part of the day in the winter and then squeeze it in when you can. And then the last 2 or 3 days, it was like -15. So I actually did some stupid treadmill miles, but I train in the winter kind of year round. And I think just I grew up in the Northwest and living in a place with pretty intense seasons, I've just really grown to embrace and enjoy the stark contrast of like winter sports, summer trudging through snow or skiing. So I think, yeah, there's pluses and minuses, but I love the intensity of the seasons here.
Yeah. So are you like a full-time athlete? I mean, sounds like you've got some control over what you're doing as far as being able to maybe go squeeze in workouts in the day and some of those things. But when you're not out, cranking massive miles on trails, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm usually writing for a number of different companies, and then I review some gear with them. And then beyond that, currently putting out or touring with a movie that we released on the Colorado Trail record. So a little bit of working with brands on the athlete side, and that's more visible than anything. But I'd say like 80% of income and everything comes from like self-built little projects and things like that, ranging from ongoing monthly writing to peddling the book I wrote to some speaking stuff, and then the movie thing, and some gear testing, gear reviewing, all kinds of fun stuff, I guess. And at the end of the month, usually break even or have a little left over. So it's a fun way to live, but it's not quite the most lucrative.
Yeah, but I don't think you'd have it any other way, right?
Yeah, no, I started out when I was 22 and took a job in finance, and for the next better part of 5 years worked in the financial world, and then decided I didn't want to have it that way. And so here I am making maybe half of back then, but it's way more fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask this question because when you're looking at everything you've done from through hiking to Triple Crowns to FKTs and just everything in between, I'm curious which of those hikes or accomplishments you're most proud of.
I think doing Nolan's 14 in the middle of the Great Western Loop was this thing. So the Great Western Loop is like a 7,000-mile circle connecting the Pacific Crest Trail, Pacific Northwest Trail, Continental Divide Trail, Grand Enchantment Trail, Arizona Trail, and then an off-trail portion to connect it into a loop. And at mile about 6,000 of that, I was in Colorado near Leadville. And I'd always wanted to do this ultra running challenge called Nolan's 14, where you summit 14,000 foot peaks in under 60 hours. And it comes out to about 100 miles long with, 40 or 50,000 feet of gain. And I had always wanted to try it when I lived in Colorado and just never got around to it. So in the middle of that through hike, I decided to give it an attempt. And with my full through hiking backpack and everything, I was able to complete it in 59 and a half hours. And that kind of opened up my eyes to like this faster way to do things, got me kind of introduced to FKTs after that, and just fell into this like intersection of realizing that the ultra running and FKT world is really not that far removed from like a pretty quick through hike. And so I think that's what I'm proud of, and also kind of led down the path of it's not as scary to jump into something like the Arizona Trail, which I ended up doing, FKT, which I ended up doing 6 months later. So I think that was a huge moment, and just being able to accomplish that with none of the runner pack or anything, just sheer will and desire.
Yeah. Well, it is wild. I've heard a little bit of Nolan's and people attempting it, and it sounds like just one of the most brutal possible like routes, right? Like just the route itself is brutal, right? I mean, you're exposed, you're high, got tons of elevation. Climbing, you've got to deal with being at elevation for long periods of time. But just even the terrain itself and the exposure is so massive. So that it does blow my mind that you did that with your full pack. I was thinking like you probably dropped your pack and ran it, right? So that is just wild. And I want to get into some of your pack and just like what you're carrying, like total base weight wise. But really, this kind of reminds me of part of the conversation that blew me away when I was talking with Josh Perry, right? And that was that like the differences in unsupported FKTs versus supported FKTs, and how on some of these routes it's just not that different. And so I specifically remember asking him like, well, how much are you running versus hiking? And he's like, I don't run. What are you talking about? And it was interesting to just think like, man, if you're just that streamlined and that dialed, I mean, for him, he's like never taking breaks. I mean, he's just never stopping, right? Like you track how much time you stop more than you track how much time you're moving. And it was just, it really like changed my perspective of it too, because by just moving at a constant speed all day, like one, it does. I mean, you still have to be an incredible athlete, right? Like it's still, from an athletic perspective, it's crazy. But it really shocked me when he was like, "Yeah, I'm not running, right?"
Yeah, no, it's about, especially in the longer things like he and I've done. It's really comes down to that efficiency thing, because runners often will take way longer breaks. And you hear about some of the through hikers out there when Carl Meltzer, Scott Jurek did the Appalachian Trail record, and they would like be hanging out for 10 hours with sleep and breakfast and dinner. Whereas, I don't know, like Joe McConaughey, when he said it, he's all about the efficiency too. So I think it's a huge equalizer. The longer it is, the more efficient you can be. And of course, walking or hiking is a lot less strain on your body, and it's pretty easy to get back up and go the next day, rather than if you're trying to run every step of the 50 miles you're doing a day.
Yeah, right. Just that impact from running is just so much more likely to create an injury, right? But
yeah.
So this Great Western Loop, I mean, that sounds pretty fascinating. It looks like 2018 is when you went and did that. I mean, how long? Okay, 7 months. So that's your year, right? It's just hiking this massive loop. How many people go and do that? I mean, did you run into people that were doing that?
No, I think Andrew Skirka is the only one who did it before me. And then I think maybe one other person did it after, one or two. So we're talking like under five ever. So not a lot of people out there doing that. And it's a cool loop because maybe like 80 to 90% of it's defined on trails ranging just from like the PCT, CDT, PNT, Arizona Trail and Grand Enchantment Trail. And then you have this like 800-mile connector section from the Grand Canyon to the PCT. And that's where you kind of just draw up your own thing. So you look at Google Maps, try to figure out where there might be a water source, put a pin in there, a couple contingency water sources, and then you just go. And there was I think 68, 70-mile waterless stretch across Joshua Tree that I had to go through. So in my pack, I had like a full gallon and then a bunch of bladders just to get through the segment. But it was a really cool trail. Or route, I guess. It just had everything you could imagine. I hit lingering snow on the PCT in the Sierra, and then an early snowstorm for the next winter on the backside in southern Colorado. So got everything you could dream of out there.
Yeah. What made you want to go and tackle this? Is it just because no one else really had besides Andrew, or like what was the big pull for you to do this specific trail?
I'd done the calendar year Triple Crown a couple of years before, and I enjoyed it, but it was really like squeezing three different through, because I did each one end to end before jumping to the next one. So it felt like three, I don't know, separate through hikes in one year. And I really wanted to see like how big of a through hike continually you can fit in a year. And I didn't really know any other routes that would get to that level. And so kind of settled on the Great Western Loop. And I'm pretty partial to the West just growing up out here. So it seemed like quite an adventure, and it definitely turned out to be. So yeah, I was really just wanting to go a little further without breaking it up. Like, just kind of see how human powered you can go in a whole circle, which seems pretty pointless, but circles are.
So I got to ask this, as a guy who's just so focused on efficiency and everything, do you filter your water?
On those things, I will. On FKTs, it's sometimes a no. but if I do treat it on FKTs, it's with 1 drop of bleach per liter, which is not the greatest, but it's a little bit of treatment.
It's a little bit. Never had any issues from that?
I've only had Giardia 4 times, so no issues beyond that.
So, are those from FKTs or just other times?
No, I've never had it from an FKT. I first got it when I was a year old. My parents won Parents of the Year that year. We went backpacking quite a bit growing up. And then I had it once on my first PCT hike. And then on the calendar year Triple Crown, I had it on the on the Continental Divide Trail. I actually had to stop at Old Faithful Village and got a quick prescription and was back to trudging along with a whole roll of toilet paper struggling. But
how long are you off trail for something like that?
I never was off trail. Maybe they were 8-mile days, but I tried to keep moving. So I guess really short days, but I don't know. Maybe I should have stopped. It might have passed quicker. But.
Jeez. Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. So on this Great Western Loop, besides some of these water carries, what do you feel like were some of the hardest aspects of it? Obviously, navigation sounded like it could be challenging at times, but was there ever like a time where you were really butting up against a wall, or it just got really difficult?
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest Trail version. So I started at the Arizona-California border right by Blythe. And then, so by the time I got there, I was about 3,000 miles in or so. And the Pacific Northwest Trail was pretty quiet, so didn't see a lot of people, was super in my own head. And I kind of combated that by just backing off a little on the miles. Well, the days were longer, so I could still get them in, but I tried to swim a lot and like do little activities like that would break up the day and the strangeness of just being out in such remote areas as northern Washington, northern Idaho, where it's a whole different culture and world than anywhere I've lived. And so I just tried to use little things like that. And then, yeah, it was just like a slog because you're maybe halfway done, but you have gone so far, yet you still have so far to go. It's even in FKTs, that's an easy point to lose yourself and just like wondering if you can actually get it done. And then in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, once I hit the CDT, I got charged by a grizzly. So then I was right back into being present and enjoying the whole adventure.
Did you bump into him or something in like close conduct, or what do you think made him charge?
I came up pretty close, maybe 50 feet when I turned a corner, and it was a mom with two cubs, and she just bluff charged at me a couple times and got on its hind legs and let the cubs run away before she disappeared. But I had my bear spray out and ready, but that's exactly when I realized I'm not exactly sure when to start spraying. So I looked that up soon thereafter.
Have you sprayed? Have you ever deployed a can just to see?
Yeah, I have since, and just to give it a test run.
Yeah. I was in Alaska and I was coming back and I went to like just go donate mine somewhere, and they had like a bin full of them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep it and go spray it. And so I went and sprayed it, and it was like incredibly underwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what my life it would come down to in that situation. I'm like, I don't know about this, you know?
Yeah, it's basically just like spray paint or something. It's nothing too insane.
They try to make it sound like, oh, it shoots so far away, but like, I don't know, like, what is it? It's like, it's not far. It's like 20 feet or something. And when you really pace off 20 feet, it's like 7 steps maybe at maximum distance. And yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where I'm like, I lost some faith, not some faith that it wouldn't like maybe save my life, but you're definitely getting smacked around before that thing leaves you.
Yeah, the grizzly's not immediately stopping as soon as you hit it either. It's not like right at that 20 feet. It's not coming closer either. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I still take it.
So in that scenario, what do you do? Did you just kind of throw your hands up and yell and back up, or what was your reaction? I
was slowly backing up, holding the bear spray, and I would have been whacked around, but luckily it was a bluff charge. It was one of those where I don't even remember grabbing the bear spray, but it was immediately in my hands and I was ready. And the bear was probably right at that 20-foot mark or so. And just like kind of wondering maybe if a couple more steps I was going to spray it, but it was a huge mess. I'd say anyone who's out backpacking in grizzly country or doing anything there, maybe think about when you're going to spray that spray, because I hadn't had that honest thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, living in Bozeman, do you have to carry bear spray everywhere you go up there? I mean, it just sounds from the outside perspective, right? And this is why it's always good to talk to someone local. But between like Wyoming and Montana lately, grizzlies are just, the attacks are going up. Like hunters are getting charged like more and more frequently. There's a kid even from where we're at here in Cedar City. He was up at a college in Wyoming as a wrestler, and they were out looking for drop horns and sheds, and they got charged and attacked 2 kids that were trying to get, it just sounds like it's getting wild up there. So is that something like you have to run every day with bear spray, or what is the situation on that?
It's really mountain range by mountain range. So we have like 50-mile long ranges, and then there's some flatlands between the next range. And each range is kind of different. So the one nearest to Bozeman, the Bridgers, I've seen some black bears, but no grizzly or anything. So I won't carry it there. But if I went into Yellowstone, I'd definitely carry it, or some of the other mountain ranges. So basically the ranges south of the interstate running through town have bears in them, and north of it are usually pretty free. So I'm a little less cautious than many, I guess.
You're faster than most people,
Maybe not a bear.
So I wanted to go back to talking about that Pacific Northwest Trail, because my thought would be that you thrive in hiking solo and being, just on your own, right? Like, I mean, from my understanding, you're probably not hiking with many people. if any, and you're doing these FKTs. Like, not many people could even keep up if they wanted. And so it's interesting to me that you almost hit this limit where, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you actually wish that you were hiking with people more often, but it sounds like you hit this limit on that trail where it was like, this is too much solitude. Like, this is too far, maybe.
Yeah, it was a number of things. So I really immersed myself in trying to hike with and at least camp with people on the Pacific Crest Trail, just knowing the rest of the Great Western Loop would be pretty void of other through hikers since I'd be way behind the bubbles on every other trail. And then, yeah, just going straight from people around to immediately no one around and getting cut up, having different level of trail. Yeah, a number of just, I don't know, I think I got sick a couple times on that portion. It was just like a low point, I think, overall. It was, I don't know, for some reason that just sticks out as like the solitude. And every time I came into town, I'm the homeless person rather than the through hiker on that trail. It was just a big shift from the Pacific Crest Trail to the Pacific Northwest Trail. And I'd actually done the PNT right out of college in 2014. So I'd done it 4 years prior. And yeah, I think it was hard comparing this segment of it in 2018 back to when I first did it and just wasn't enjoying it as much. And I think it's kind of hard to compare something to anything you have nostalgia about, because nostalgia always wins, even if it wasn't as fun in the moment. So I think a number of those things, and heading west to east, didn't feel like I was making any progress since I had to go, because I'm at the top of the loop and I have to go back all the way around. So feels like I'm just adding to it. But as soon as I hit the CDT, things immediately turned around. And I don't know, it's everything like that comes into through hiking and backpacking, where one little change, like a change in direction, can massively change your perception or perspective on everything.
Yeah. Have you ever had to get off trail on a like on a through hike, or like just scrap something completely?
Yeah, I went for the FKT on Nolan's 14 in 2019, and just 3 peaks in, wasn't feeling it, had like an asthma attack, had a bunch of things, and I just convinced myself I didn't want to do it, which I don't think I did. I don't really regret it. So I quit there, and then I tried the FKT on the Superior Hiking Trail, and 3 days in, I was on pace, but a number of issues, like my pack ripped, and I just was not, it felt like a chore out there every day. So I only had like four days left to be out there. So I just hitched back to my car and went on some runs and enjoyed the foliage, and just made it a more relaxed vacation than an FKT effort, because I just wasn't in the mindset.
Yeah. What about FKTs, or even long trails for that matter? What draws you to them? Like, what makes you want to go do this time and time again? Because let's be real, like an FKT, it's a lot of pain, right? I mean, you're pushing, and it's painful. It gets more painful. Then you start hallucinating. I mean, it just compounds the farther and the longer you go. And so, like, to you, what's the big draw there? Like, what keeps you coming back?
I think it's pretty cool to get to go after something with only one goal, which is like, I want to do the John Muir Trail as fast as possible, and that's it. So especially like on that one, there's really no cell service. So you just strip away everything else and you get to like intensely move towards one goal. I kind of like just that it simplifies everything. Like, no one's expecting an email back, or you don't have to like worry about texting someone back or whatever. Anything in life, it's sort of like you get this period of time where there's only one sole focus. And I think that's kind of addictive, especially in a world where we're so fragmented. And I don't think our energy or our focus is ever 100% in one spot. So I think that's kind of a special feeling you get doing that. And I felt that especially on my first through hike in 2011 too. So I don't think it's only FKTs, even a backpacking trip or something like that. It's just pretty special to have one thing you're doing for the next however many days or nights, and then then you go do it. And whether you succeed or not, you still get to be in that mindset for a little while.
I mean, I think most people would describe that as like flow, right? Like where you just lose track of time and yeah, you're just totally zoned out or zoned in, however you want to look at that. I think it's really interesting. And so you've got, I guess you've hit those states also just backpacking as well as doing this, but it just makes sense. I mean, you're just so singular of mind, right? When you're out there, you're just covering those miles. You're just step in front of the other. Nothing else matters. I mean, right, on an FKT attempt, you don't have time to text someone back, right? I mean, that's huge wasted time, right? Or
yeah.
I mean, so this year or I guess now it's last year in 2022, you set the new JMT, John Muir Trail, fastest known time, and you beat it by 13 minutes, right?
Yeah, it was a close one.
I mean, so in scenarios like that, it's like you just don't have any time, you can't be distracted, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting thing because so it took 3 days and 47 minutes or something like that. And so the whole time for like 2 of the days, at least, you're just putting in as good of an effort as you can. And then that last day is really where, you have that baseline, or my goal was actually to try to break 3. I didn't quite do that, but failed well enough that I still got the FKT. But it's like you just put yourself in position in these FKTs. And then that last day is like, all right, 30 miles, 40 miles, 30 miles, whatever is left. Like now I have to sort of run down Forrester or just sprint up Whitney and things like that. And those are those things that are sort of like growing up playing sports where you think it's like the biggest thing in the world, yet you get older and realize no one cares really about your high school basketball team. But it is cool to like feel so invested in a moment that, you're just seeing how well you can perform. And I think that's kind of the fun thing, that especially as adults, there's less competitive outlets, and it's kind of a fun way to push your body, whether it results in success or not. You at least get to have fun redlining on the way up Mount Whitney at 4 a.m.
Have you found that like setting goals like this and going after them, I mean, you've achieved them. I'm sure there's some that you haven't achieved. Has that changed you in any way? Or like for me, I guess I would say I'm pretty addicted to just goal setting and chasing goals. And I look back at that because you can see people around you that maybe don't have that same mentality. And I think for me, like it just was built like line upon line, right? Like something, it's not like it just was. Some people might say you were born with it, but really it's like, no, like I got a little taste of it here. And then I went set a little harder of a goal and I hit that. And then I just kind of kept building line upon line. But I mean, does that resonate with you in your experience of that? And is that just kind of something that's like now just so much a part of you can't stop?
Yeah, I think it's a huge part in the sense that when I started through hiking in 2011, I had a 55-pound external frame pack. I couldn't make it to Lake Morena on the first day. I was trying to get to an average of 20 miles a day, but it was like impossible. Now that mileage has just increased exponentially. And I think that that's really the thing of reframing things as you bite off more goals, or you do like your first 50-mile day, then it's like 20 miles doesn't feel so bad by comparison. So it's just broadening that perspective of what's achievable and doable. And I guess it's like something that's a part of everyday life, and especially on the trails. Like in 2016 on the calendar year Triple Crown, I just made this goal one day that I wanted to see if I could do what I called a daylight 50. So I wanted to do daylight or during the daylight with no headlamp, get in 50 miles from like right when the sun rose until the sun set. And it was like, there's no real point to it, but I was able to do it. And it was pretty fun to just have this goal of, can I get 50 miles in without ever using a headlamp and finish before sunset? And so little things like that really translate into life too, by breaking them up, or, you know, finding a way to make something mundane a little more fun, or I don't know, like it's just a huge way to get a sense of pride or accomplishment based on, even if it's like a menial or task you're not really into, there's a goal associated with it. Like, I want to get a draft of this piece done in an hour, and then like get that done, and then you can polish it, because usually not that good, but at least you got something to work with. I think it's just almost gamifying how you go about life. And I always try to set my goals based on maybe right around what I think I can achieve. So like on the long trail, Josh Perry had like a time of maybe 6 days, 8 hours or something. But I wanted to just like the John Muir Trail, set my goal for 6 days to just see if I could break that and have something to shoot for that was sort of arbitrary in my mind and also not dependent on somebody else. And so on that one, it was pretty motivating because I got the long trail record by like 5 days, 23 hours and 49 minutes. So it's sort of like, I wonder if I could have set the goal a couple hours faster and just see if that happened too. So I think, yeah, especially serious and committed goal setting is like one of the more motivating things, whether it's professional or recreational or whatever realm of life.
Yeah. So I want to hear what you think about this, or what you would tell a listener, your thoughts on this. And we don't have any history, me and you, Jeff, but and I don't even know how much you know about Outdoor Vitals, but we actually are running, last year we ran a beta group through a program called the 100 Mile Challenge. And a lot of that comes from just this concept too of like, not all of us are thru hikers. Not all of us, you know, kind of make the massive lifestyle changes sometimes to be able to pull some of that off, or from the beginning, right? Like that was something you adapted really young in life and just never let go, right? But there's still a lot of us, in my opinion, that benefit from pushing. And so last year we created this program called the 100 Mile Challenge, and basically we put together this training framework. It took people through everything from like physical training to getting your gear ready, doing shakeout trips, hydration, all these different things. And then at the end of it, after you went kind of through this program, we had a window of about a month long where you would go and attempt a 100-mile consecutive hike, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's something that they've actually never done, which to you like is going to be like, that's like 2 days of jogging around, it's nothing. But to a lot of people, they haven't done that, right? It's always 2-3 day trips, and it's not big mileage. It's not, anything like that. And so it was really interesting because we had this massive, of just the 100 people we put into this beta group, we had a massive positive response. And it was very fulfilling from my side, right? Because a lot of the work that I do isn't face-to-face in person. And so getting this feedback inside this closed Facebook group and a few things was really powerful. So we rolled it out again this year. It's currently taking registrations, and it's tons of people from last year have already jumped on, and it's been growing. But I try to explain this because I see this and I'm like, we have thousands and thousands of followers and customers and email addresses, tens of thousands. And it's like, so I see the amount of signups and it's like, it's good, but it's like, I see this, I'm like, man, everyone needs to do this. Like because it's like, we price it where we literally don't make any money on this. Like the registration price covers the cost of like a swag box that we send you with like a sun hoodie already in it. And then other partners that are donating stuff to this. And, but the concept really was that it was really interesting to watch people that did this last year. Like a lot of them lost significant weight, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A lot of them worked through injuries that were holding them back. A lot of them did a trip just because it was a goal to go do a trip. Now they might not have even hit the 100 miles. And so they're kind of coming back this year maybe to try that. But like they went and did the biggest trip of their lifetime with their son or their daughter and so it's really cool to get that feedback. But it's funny because it's like you talk to guys like you and it's like you've hiked like 30,000 miles in your lifetime. Yet somehow, in my opinion, by just setting a goal of that 100 miles can also be really powerful. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And if you would suggest, or like think that that's something you'd pitch, to anyone listening, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that whether it's 100 miles or 50 miles or 20 miles. I grew up going on 3-mile backpacking trips where we would camp at the lake for 2 days and then backpack 3 miles back out. So it's not that long ago. I'm only 32 that was like the generational way to backpack, like through hikers. I only learned about it by seeing a through hiker near like Pamelia Lake or something in Oregon. And so I think that it's really cool to have this whole different style, because it is a different style than like camping or backpacking with maybe a Boy Scout troop or something when you're younger. And I think that it's really cool to give kind of the resources and the ability to cover 100 miles or whatever happens to be the threshold that you can fit into life. And I think the bigger thing than that actual doing the furthest thing you've ever done is like spending the longest amount of time you've ever spent, maybe disconnected or out there, or, really looking forward to the next meal or a break or something, or like jumping in a alpine lake. And I have some friends that are guides, and they say that's one of the most rewarding things is like the miles and the route and the beauty. Like that's really cool, but you could like Google that and see a photo of it. But it's the self-empowerment and the confidence that knowing your body can do that. And it's only a little bit of training away from being able to do that, I think is really the thing to focus on, is that like sign up for it, take a plunge, tell your spouse or your friend that you're going to try to do a 100-mile trip and watch them think you're crazy, and then show back up a couple months later having done it. And I think what that offers in self-confidence is a lot bigger than any of the other things, because that goal can just become the next thing of maybe you want to run a marathon, or maybe you want to do something in the gym or lose weight or anything like that. It can just show you that you have the discipline to do something like that. And I think that's really at the heart of it, because it's not easy, especially if you have a full-time job, to use your time off to cover 100 miles and get the gear, learn how to use it, be in shape to cover it. And then while you're out there, to get through like blisters and things like that, realize your feet swell 2 sizes and your shoes suck. All those things are what really just add to that commitment. And you can always use that moving forward in life, that when things suck and it hurts, you decided to keep going so you can keep drawing on that experience. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to put a new category in our training framework called the Jeff category, because ours really caps out like on the more advanced track. Like after you kind of set your baseline at the very beginning, you kind of get on a track of how you should train, how many miles a week, things like that. And I think it really caps out at about 20-ish miles a day, 20 to 25. So we'll have to put a whole new category in there to hit the kind of miles you're hitting. So speaking of that though, like during the John Muir Trail, I mean, just doing some quick math in my head, you're doing 70 miles in a 24-hour period on average?
Yeah, I think it was pretty consistent, like low 70s each of the days. So yeah. And then a little bit of sleep the first day, and then not much the next 2 days.
Yeah. So I heard that you potentially fell asleep while hiking on that FKT. How does that happen? How does that happen?
Well, it was, if anyone's familiar with the trail, I'm heading southbound, and I just crossed over Forester Pass and maybe had like 30 miles to go. And I'm just battling all kinds of hallucinations. This is my third night out there, maybe a cumulative sleep of an hour and a half or something. And it starts to feel like there's an earthquake going on while I'm walking, and I'm experienced with this hallucinating thing. So I'm writing it off. I know it's fake. And then all of a sudden I just wake up after hitting the ground because I'd fallen asleep and just like tipped over forward while hiking. And it was very, it's kind of that like soft gravelly stuff out on kind of the exposed Southern Sierra. So no real harm, but I woke up on the ground, had to pick myself up. And then like 5 minutes later, it was this decision, like I have no chance like this. So I made like a huge decision that I'm going to sleep for 10 minutes. Hopefully that revitalizes me. And either I'm not going to get the record if I try to keep going without sleeping, or, this is the only way I have a shot. So I took a 10-minute nap, and then I basically ran up Mount Whitney. Like, if anyone, I got some of the Strava crowns and stuff on the route because I'm just flying. Like, I was just so in tune and excited about how hard I was breathing and redlining, just spurring myself further, and got to the top, and I'm just overheated and in shorts and just a thin coat, and asked someone to take a picture just to have some proof at the top. And they were blown away that I was just in shorts. But yeah, I fell asleep while hiking, and that was a big wake up call, literally, that I need to take a short nap.
So that's so bizarre, by the way. But so why do you could that not be considered you passing out, or were you sleeping on the ground, or did you wake up when you hit the ground?
So I woke up when I hit the ground. I didn't.
Okay.
So I just the eyes closed and didn't open while upright, and then realized I was on the ground. Yeah, I guess I don't know what the line between passing out and falling asleep is, but that's somewhere in between.
Yeah, you're one of the few people in the world that's flirted that line, I guess, where you're gonna fall asleep standing up or pass out, one of the two.
Yeah, I was having almost nightmares awake going into that last night, just knowing how rough it was going to be. Just, I knew how tired I was, and nights are always way worse than days as far as that late in an FKT. And just knowing I basically had to push through the whole night was foreboding thoughts.
Do you get scared of the hallucinations to come? That would be a real thought that I would have of let's just say you start hallucinating, you're seeing eyes or something, right?
Yeah,
I've been out there, and sometimes you're like, what was that? And then it starts working, and you're like, I always say that I don't watch scary movies for a reason. It's because I backpack alone way too much, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But I would think that hallucinations is because I'm just dealing with reality. I'm not dealing with the next level of hallucinations, and that to me could be frightening. Even in the daytime, to just be like, man, what am I going to see tonight? What's going to happen?
I don't get scared anymore. I'm pretty good about deciding what's real and what's not, just with some experience. But on the Arizona Trail FKT, that was one of my first experiences. I hit some snow on the North Rim and was slowed down a little bit, so I had to push through basically the entire last night. And it was a full moon, so between the moon shadows and the contrast of the tall trees over the snow, my mind kept turning all the trees into witches and stuff. Oh. And it was really freaky. I was really struggling to stay calm through that. And it's happened a few more times since then, but every time it gets a little bit more noticeable, or you can kind of tell what's real and not. And now it's equal parts observing and being interested, and then also using it as I don't know, entertainment or something. It's kind of crazy. I like to make videos when I'm out there, especially in the afternoon or during the day, if I'm having some flickers of reality, and just point it at whatever I'm seeing and say what I'm seeing, because I just think it's funny now to look back. On the John Muir Trail, I was filming this section near Ray Lakes, and just wow, it looks like there's statues all around me, and it's just trees and stumps. There's nothing, and it doesn't make sense. Daytime? Yeah, it's in the afternoon. It's, I don't know, maybe 48, 50 hours into the attempt, and just well, it seems like there's things all around me, these statues. There's none in the video, but it's just kind of funny to look back on what your mind can do and how it just wants to play tricks on you once you've stayed up for that long.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because, reading up on this with ultra runners and stuff, they really kind of talk about the witching hour between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. It's when most hallucinations happen, so on and so forth. But thinking about that a little bit more, it kind of makes sense that you could hallucinate at totally different times after that first full day or 2 days, right? Because how many people are going that far without sleeping? Basically, you guys that are setting these FKTs, basically the people that are doing 200 plus mile events. And even those people, there's only a handful of them that will, run through 2 nights without sleeping, right? Because let's say you're doing, I don't know, what is it, the Moab 240, right? Like that ultra race. Like most of the people even in that, they're going to sleep for a couple hours. Like they're just going to do it, right? But I was watching like a video on that with, I think it's Jeff Browning.
Yep.
He ran through 2 straight nights, and it's like, man, you could probably count on, your hands and toes how many people are actually pushing that level of sleep deprivation. And it never got me thinking that, like, yeah, you could totally just start hallucinating in the day after you get to that point, right?
Oh yeah, daytime hallucinations are kind of the most fun because you're most grounded in reality. You still get to see things. So I've done the Cocodona 250 actually twice, and both times I've slept, I think 2 hours or less both times. And yeah, by the last day or second to last day, you're getting these late afternoon hallucinations, and they're pretty crazy. It's just like a stick will seem like it's slithering or morphs into a snake or something like that. Just whatever is out there, your mind will just turn it into something else. And it's pretty fascinating to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So how well do you see running translating into hiking, like for training purposes, or like, do you do any like weighted training, meaning like lifting or anything even remotely like that? Or do you just run to train for hiking? Or
I run because it's the least amount of time to exercise and still get the miles in. And then I do a lot of hills and trails and stuff too, which I think this is a big thing with ultra running and runners is they call it going for a run. But when it's like steep uphill, everyone is power hiking, they call it, which is just hiking. It just sounds cooler.
It's just hiking. Yeah. It's way cooler to say power hiking though.
Yeah. So ultra runners are like not that much different. The only difference is maybe jogging and running the downhills and some of the flats. So it's a very translatable way to get out there, especially in the mountains, because half your day out there is basically hiking, and that's very comparable to through hiking. So I think it's an efficient way to kind of do both things, since I've been running some races lately in the ultra running space and also FKTs, and then just getting out on through hikes and backpacking trips too. So kind of train for all three at the same time.
Yeah. All right. So I want to ask you some questions around nutrition and gear for a minute. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here, but let's start with nutrition. I'd like to hear what you eat first in an FKT situation, and then kind of in a more like traditional backpacking scenario, which big mile backpacking, we'll just call it that. I don't know if that's a category, but we're going to create it for you. So FKT, like what are you eating? How many calories? How are you getting them in?
Yeah, definitely leaving the stove at home and no cold soaking, because I think it's pretty gross. But personal preference. So everything is based around snacks, nuts, and it's all calories per ounce. It's like the only time I'll put on my nerd hat and like actually calculate how much anything is. So I'll buy like a thing of nuts or stuff in bulk, and then I'll actually separate it into bags and write how many calories is on it. And then if it's like I guess any FKT now, I'll put them into gallon Ziploc bags with like, this is 5,000 calories. This is the first day. This is the second day. And then, so everything
you only eating 5,000 calories?
On the John Muir Trail, I packed 15,000 and I only ate about 7,000 of them. I just did not eat many. I was eating leftover JMT food for like a week after that.
How did you keep going? I mean, you probably burned that in the first half of one day in all reality. So then you're going 2.5 days on basically no energy from food eaten. It's one way to look at it, but geez.
Yeah, the last day I just really couldn't eat anything, and then just used caffeine, which I've done in a 100-mile race as well. I just could not eat. And so this 100 miler, actually, I couldn't eat after 50 miles. So I had like 7 cold brew coffees for the last 50 miles and made it with like maybe 6 pretzels and 7 cold brews. And that's how I made it through. So I don't know. Oftentimes, like on the Colorado Trail record, I was able to fuel the whole way and I ran out of food with like half a day left or about a day left maybe, which is, it's a little uncomfortable, but it's kind of perfect, which means you didn't carry too much food.
Right.
But yeah, so it's very nut based, try to get like plenty of fats. And I categorize it 80% of the calories or what I'm taking are really high calories per ounce, and protein, fat, like pretty dense, like you're getting good value for the weight as far as calories and nutrition. And then 20% is like, what do I want to be eating out there? Like what's going to turn my day around? And it's usually something savory or some kind of snack mix, or maybe even just some crappy crackers that sound really good. And, or even like Sour Patch Kids or whatever it may be. It's like that 20% is this like, all right, this is something to look forward to, because you can't just eat spoonfuls of peanut butter the whole time and be happy with your life. And so I try to give myself that pass.
We haven't talked about the Colorado Trail FKT, which I definitely want to touch on and have you talk to people about that. But are you saying that on the Colorado Trail FKT attempt, you also ate the same way, where you're eating?
Yeah, I had.
So how many calories a day are you planning on there? Same thing, 5,000 or more?
I think that was 5,500, and I packed 8.5 days of food with the intent of finishing in 9 days.
So that's, I just, did you, and you ate it, I guess, but I mean,
yep.
That's bizarre to me, right? Because one, if 80% of my food was like nuts and peanut butter and stuff like that, like I wouldn't want to eat it. I would be like, especially at high altitude, like it starts to mess with your gut a little bit sometimes. And I would just be like, no, I'm not eating. I can't eat that. Like it would. So that's crazy to me. I would almost resonate more with when I interviewed Joshua Perry. He eats like 12,000 calories a day on the PCT. So the different style, right? But like 9,000 calories of it are just sugars, right? Like gummy bears and M&Ms and just junk, right? And so, but like you're burning at least 12,000 calories a day, if not more. And so that's really just got my head spinning, I guess, on
I think
what you're doing.
So I think if I were going to go after like the PCT or something longer, even the Arizona Trail, it might be closer to 8, 9, or 10,000 calories a day. But I think in that under, I don't know, Colorado Trail's pushing it, but for sure under a week, I think it's hard for your body to adapt to processing up to however many calories you're burning. And you're already going to be at a deficit if you're covering 50 miles a day. And so for the shorter stuff, I kind of found that maybe 5,000 to 6,000 calorie range to be that one without putting too much stress on your stomach, especially at altitude. And on the Colorado Trail, I had plenty of issues the first 3 days just because my body wasn't used to processing that much food at altitude. And then it turned around and hiker hunger hit huge, and I finished like way more food than expected. So it was very, just very skewed distribution when I ate the calories. But I think that the shorter things, it's a lot of using up your body's stores already, and then also just maximizing how much your body can process. And then when it's something probably 10 days or longer, that's when your body is going to find that rhythm. It's just like when hiker hunger hits for people who've thru-hiked, is maybe into that second week is when your body's starting to be able to process the actual amount you're burning. So that's kind of how I think of it. And I think that that's exactly what I do on the PCT as well. But something short like the John Muir Trail, you kind of want to finish hungry because every extra ounce you're carrying, you got to carry that entire way.
I think that's really, really insightful and a good way to look at it too, that you can't go from eating like 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day, which would be kind of like a big day at home, really, to just quadrupling that. Right. So that's really interesting. So if you were to go, so I guess you kind of already touched on that. Like if you were to go do the Arizona Trail, you'd be upping those calories, obviously. So what about just hydration? Like, is there any rules of thumb that you follow with staying hydrated? Because I think that, I mean, it's huge. I see, especially at altitude, I preach this all the time. I see people all the time that go up to altitude and they start complaining that their head's hurting. And I'm like, well, have you been drinking? And they're like, oh yeah, like I'm drinking, but like I'm not even sweating. So like, I don't even need to drink, you know, but I'm like, yeah, you're not sweating because you're in direct sunlight and the wind is whipping, you know what I mean? At altitude, it's always blowing. And so like, you're never going to get like a big pool of sweat when you're at 12,000 feet.
Yeah.
And so I'm just always like this big believer that people start to get dehydrated way before they realize it. And then obviously then it just opens up this massive door for elevation sickness to come in, you know, hard and fast. But are there just any rules of thumb that you follow with hydration when you're out?
Yeah, I don't think you can drink to thirst. I think you got to be a little bit ahead of that. Like, I think it's huge in especially the drier climates and at altitude where sometimes you're not feeling as thirsty because you are at altitude and maybe it's just a sip or something every 15 minutes or something. But I think for one, going into a trip hydrated, and then from there, even if you're not that thirsty, whether it's some additive to your water to make it taste different or whatever. But I think it's a huge thing. And one thing I try to do is when I refill water at a stream or a lake or something, is I'll try to, I think a liter's a little ambitious, but I'll try to get down like a third of a liter or half a liter there as kind of this, my heart rate's lower. I just stop to get water. It's going to be easier to drink than when I'm going up a hill, puffing and puffing. And then kind of you have that way to replenish every time you're getting water. You're assured if you stop 4 times a day, you already got in 2 liters if you're getting in half a liter each time. And then from there, you're just trying to drink if you're not just dying going up a hill, which is hard to drink then too. So yeah, I think it's really important the biggest thing is probably going into a trip hydrated, because I bet me and everyone else walks around dehydrated daily. So I think that's the biggest place to start. If you're going to start a trip at altitude, or here in Montana, it's really dry weather, and down in Utah, you get dry weather. Like, you just get dehydrated walking around. So making a point 2 or 3 days before to go in hydrated is going to have more impact on your trip than just trying to drink more while you're out there.
Yeah. When you think about staying hydrated, do you like to look at it like, I need this much in a day? Do you base your hydration off of the number of hours out there? I mean, like, cause like you can't just drink to thirst, right? So what are you trying to base any of that off of? I mean, you're doing huge days. Like for instance, I went and did rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon. And the first day we went rim to the bottom and then slept. So we were using fast packs. We had all of our gear with us. And so it was about 38 miles. I drank 12 liters of water and could have drinking more. But I'm like a 200-pound guy. I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, right? So I'm a heavy, like I took a sweat test and they classified me as like a level 5 severe sweat guy. So I drank 12 liters and it was still like, you know, I think I could have honestly should have drinking more. Like I started cramping at one point just a little bit, and not that all cramping is related to hydration, but for you, like how much water are you putting down, or do you think your body's just incredibly efficient, or?
Yeah, I don't do that well in the heat either. So I usually set a metric, or it's kind of based on, so if there's a water source in 10 miles, I'll try to have finished the 2 liters I have with me, and just a good round baseline for your average person that might not know if they're a heavy sweater or not is at least 1 liter every 5 miles, I think is a pretty good gauge. And then something like the Grand Canyon, where especially at the bottom, it's pretty hot down there. Maybe up that a little bit more, but so if I start out something and the first water source is in 10 miles, I'll probably have 2 liters or 2.5 liters. And my goal is for all that water to be gone by the time I get there. And then I'll try to drink a half liter there, fill up, and then maybe it's 10 more miles and finish that by the next one. So it's these longer goals where it's just like you want to be sipping on enough And then you have these shorter periods where you always know, like, wow, I'm not drinking enough water. And you know that 10 miles in rather than day 2 when you have a massive headache and can't get out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really smart. And I mean, at the end of the day, like the best thing to do is just to get out there and figure out some of your own stuff, right? I feel like I've been investing a lot into hydration lately as I started to, because I only started trail running, I guess I'm coming up on 2 years now, but before that, like you've never seen me run in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was a bigger kid growing up, and in the sports that I played, I was, it was better to be bigger and heavier, but, which, well, at least that's what they told us. Right. But,
yeah. Do you use electrolytes too in your water, like for the Grand Canyon?
Yes. So that same sweat test that I was just talking about, like I'm also a level 5, severe salt output. Right.
Okay.
And so I have to take in salts. Like I definitely have to help retain the water, but also just with the amount that I lose. In fact, on that sweat test, which I've been learning more about, was probably a hair falsely high, but it was something like the hyper Scratch Lab hypers. It's like 1,600 milligrams of salt. Like I can almost drink one of those like per liter of water according to this test. So I think it was a little bit too high in the field and in real life conditions and stuff. But yeah, I have to take a lot of salt and supplement in that way. But I also went way too far. So I ran my first ultra last year, and I started to cramp up like early, like mile 10. I'm cramping up, and I'm like, I got 45 miles. Like it was a 45-mile race. I got 35 miles left, and I'm cramping up. Like, this is terrible. And so I like doubled down on my salt. So I went like way salty, and then it fixed it in the next increment. I had like no cramping, got this second win, started doing really well. And then I made a fatal mistake of not going back to neutral, not going back to 0. And so then I went through the next section way salty again, and then I couldn't drink any of it. And then by that point I was just dehydrated. But I've been listening to some things recently. I don't know if you listened to what's his name? Coopcast or something like that.
Jason Coop, yeah.
Yeah. He just had a really interesting episode that I was trying to dial in, that basically that there's some scientific research paper that was just written that kind of said, like, you don't technically have to supplement with salt until you are doing like these massive, bigger, longer efforts. And so I look back at that race and I think really I had a hydration problem. I probably could have kept my salt the same the whole time and just focused on drinking. But anyways, all that to be said, I definitely take salts, but I'm still trying to dial that in. But I think I actually put probably too much focus on it last year.
Yeah. And I think if anyone wants to get even a little bit more in the weeds, I really like sauna training for stuff with like dry and heat intense things. And what I usually do is I'll work out, and I've done this off and on for 3 or 4 years. So especially if there's something looming that'll be in a hot, dry climate, is I'll work out, do whatever kind of workout, doesn't matter, just get your heart rate up. And then I usually sit in the sauna for 15 to 20 minutes and try to drink a liter of water. And then what I think is the important part is jumping back into 20 minutes of whatever kind of workout you want, getting your body's your heart rate up again. And so I found that to work really good as far as being able to process that water while you're like dehydrated and sweating, and then jump right back into physical activity and stuff, and kind of just that, I don't know, working through that water consumption on top of heavy sweating and then jumping back into that elevated heart rate. So there's I think the Carmichael method. There's a few sauna things, and you can kind of work out less and get fit or used to whatever upcoming thing you're doing with a few different sauna things. So there's cool research on that out there if there's any nerds that want to dive into that for their big 100-mile challenge.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. And like in Coach Coop's book, like he talks a lot about gut training, right? Like training, like like while you're working out, like getting calories in you while you're actually moving and trying to train your gut that way. And I think it all pays dividends. I'd love to hear your take on this. I was listening to something with Kilian Jornet. For those of you who don't know him, he's basically the number one ultra runner in the world and has been for a while. Like he's just
probably ever.
He's probably one of the top athletes that's ever walked the planet that no one knows about. But like he's one of the things that they brought up was like I think he summited Denali with like one bottle of water, and then so he started to talk about that, and it basically, if you read between the lines, it seems like, and I've heard that this actually isn't what he's doing today, but like maybe this is what he did when he was younger. So I don't know the validity of this. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. But it seemed like he would actually train lack of drinking, if that makes sense. Like almost trying to train his body to either consume less fluid or know what to do when you get dehydrated type of training, so that, because he kind of said, like, if you miss an aid station on an ultra or you have an issue, like it doesn't have to derail your whole race. And so he kind of like trains with that mindset. And it got me thinking of like, dude, I walk around with a bottle of water in my hand or a drink in my hand everywhere I go, every single day. Like my body's never deprived of water or the ability to get water. And then I go out on trail and I'm you know what I mean? There's not an abundance of water everywhere. I'm like, maybe I need to start training without water just to see if that benefits me. But because he said he went in college, so when he was really young, right? He went like 5 days without drinking water, but he was still working out and then going to school and working out and going to school. And on day 5, he passed out. And that's when he's like, okay, I know my limit now. And then, that was the end of his test, right? It was mind-boggling to me, but I was like, man, maybe I've been overhydrating, or maybe I need to train my body to do this. I mean, sauna sounds like it can kind of do a similar thing, but
yeah, I've done all kinds of these things because I really find importance in it. And I've done both I'm hungry right now, but I'm going to go on an hour run and then I'll eat after. So it's running with that hunger. I've done it where I'm thirsty and it's hot out and I'll go on a run. And then I've also done it with, like today, I ate lunch and then immediately after I went on a run. So I think it's almost just preparing your body for both things. And I think a huge thing with backpacking and thru hiking and even FKTs and stuff is we're not really used to eating while working out because that's not something we do in real life. So I think that and I think there's a lot of importance in it really helps to have real food. And then if you don't eat that, if you eat more like a snack or trail mix, but even like a piece of toast during a workout or a sandwich or whatever it may be, like is going to train you above and beyond. And then I don't know if there's merit to it. I don't know if there's any science, but the running when you're hungry or running when you're thirsty, I think it at least helps you know your body. A couple different routes I've done, I've bailed out because I knew I'd crossed the threshold of thirsty to like dehydration, and this is going to get pretty bad. And I knew where a creek was like a couple miles away. So it at least helps you know your body more. I don't know if it contributes to being better at anything, but you do learn when you're butting up against like, okay, I'm really dehydrated versus just thirsty.
Yeah. I think there is something to it. And again, I'm no doctor, I'm no scientist, but in my personal opinion, I think when you put those kind of stresses on your body, it forces your body to learn what to do in those conditions again, right? Mm-hmm. And then your body is more likely to know how to handle it the next time it comes up. So when I think of like that ultra that I did, that was the first time I've ever done anything like that, right? Like I've done like 20-mile runs or 20-mile backpack, 25-mile, even getting close to, even in the Grand Canyon, like with 38-mile day. But it's like every time you do one of those, I think your body, I mean, it's just so smart that I think it catalogs a bit of like what just happened. This completely shocked our entire system, but like we survived. And now we know that we'll survive the next time instead of like cramping to try to like put the brakes on you or just different things like that. And so I think all the things like you're training like that, mixed with massive like efforts, it's just going to train the body to not freak out the next time you push, an extreme like that, right?
Yeah, I think there's really two things that are big is like once you've done a 38-mile day or run, then a 20-mile day is going to feel a lot more realistic or easier to do. But if you never have, like when I started the PCT my first time, looking back, completely physically capable, but it was such a long thing to think about that they weren't consistent. And maybe I did my first one a couple weeks in, but nothing was consistent for a couple months until I'd kind of broken down that mental barrier of, just a little bit more efficient and you're in the 20s easily. And I think that applies like up to however many miles you're wanting to do, whether it makes a 30 or 40-mile day feel more manageable. And then the other thing is very similar to like feeling hungry and still pushing forward or feeling thirsty. It's the same thing with the hallucinations and sleep deprivation. Is if you've been there before, you have that familiarity and kind of know how to navigate it. Like right now, I love going through the night. Even in 2022, I don't know if it's healthy, but there were 15 different nights that I skipped a night of sleep, whether it was for an adventure, a 100-mile race, or 250-mile race, or an FKT. 15 different times I just completely skipped every second of sleep that night. So it does get easier, but you have to start with that first time, and the first time is going to be pretty tough. Like the first ultra is going to be tough and you're going to make mistakes, but that makes the next one a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So to simplify this just a little more, I'd say for anyone listening that these numbers were thrown out might be too daunting or too big. My thought would be, it wasn't that long ago, even for me, where a 15-mile day was a full day of hiking. I mean, and then it's like, as you get consistent with that, or maybe it's a 10-mile day for you, just like Jeff was saying here, like if you want to and you keep pushing, those will get easier and easier, and day by day you'll just continue to build to where, we went and did the Uinta Highline Trail last summer as a team here. So we took 5 guys out of the office and we all went and did that, and it was just funny because some of the days we're doing like 26 miles and in a big group too, like you don't get to control the whole day's schedule quite as much. And so it ends up being an entire day of hiking, right? Like almost from sun up till sundown. Like we're pitching our tents right at dusk a lot of times, and we're not sleeping in, we're getting up at like 7 or 6:30 and having camp on our back by 7. And so, but anyways, it's just so funny because in those days it's like, dude, if we stopped at 20 miles, we could just hang out here and it'd be so like, that's like nothing, like we'd get so much recovery time. And so, but to some people, like 20 miles is a deal breaker, right? And so it's just all perspective, and you can always, do what you're capable of now. And if you want to push those miles, just keep doing it and it'll come for sure. So,
yeah.
Okay,
and definitely, I just want to say, definitely I think anyone out there, it's super daunting. Even just think about, I can't fathom 2,600 miles, which is like the PCT, and no one that does it can at all. And a lot of people start out and do 5 miles or something. So I would say, much like earlier in the goal conversation, is what is a meaningful amount of miles you want to build up to a day? And then it's just the stepping stones of, you just got to make the first goal to go out on that first hike or run or whatever, and then you can build from there. But the hardest thing about all this, and why not everyone does it, is it takes a lot of days of doing 2 miles or 3 miles or 4 miles. And really the rewarding part is sticking with it, whether you actually hit however many miles you're going for. But I think it's a pretty special thing in today's climate where it's easy to jump goals really quick, to just stick with something and finally hit your goal.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears here for just a second, and just very quickly, I want to hear so on a longer effort where you're going to sleep, which apparently is an option now, I thought most people slept, or went to sleep, but like, let's say you were going to do, let's say it's the Arizona Trail again. Okay.
Yeah.
Like it's 800 plus miles. Like you're going to sleep. You can't do that in one push, right? What are you packing? What's in your bag? What type of gear? What kind of base weight are you aiming at? those types of things?
Yeah, to start, let's just say for relatability and fun that it's like a fun, casual, maybe 30 to 35 day Arizona Trail through hike. I would aim for a base weight of sub 11 pounds, in between 10 and 11. I found 10 pounds just under it to be like the last couple items you're getting rid of are things I don't want to get rid of. So 11 pounds has seemed to be like a pretty functional level. And then I usually do a quilt. I think they're just, especially the Arizona Trail, they're so functional because it can be a blanket or it can be basically
the highs and lows there are so extreme.
Yeah. So basically it can be a quilt or like a poor man's sleeping bag. So big fan of that. I'm a single wall shelter guy, usually a trekking pole based shelter that just, on that, especially a through hike, it's just lighter and there's not a lot of condensation in Arizona. And then maybe a 40-liter pack. I test gear and use all kinds of different gear. So I'd say, I don't know, there's plenty of good options out there. Not to say that lots of stuff is the same, but there's plenty of good stuff wherever you want to buy your packs and stuff. And then foam sleeping pad, because I'm still young enough that my back can handle the ground without something inflatable.
like a Nemo folding one, like that type.
Yeah, probably that.
Wow.
On an FKT, I'll usually use a pack with like an insert of padding, and then I'll just pull that out and it just covers like my hip bone and maybe my shoulder. So this is luxury, taking a Z fold.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, let me just ask this, and if you don't want to say, don't say, but like, what's your build? Like how?
I'm 6'2", 175. So
yeah,
like probably pretty middle of the ground, taller.
So if I lose, what did I say it was, like 200 pounds? If I lose 25 pounds, can I sleep on a Z pad like that and be comfortable?
it's not like that enjoyable, but it's this thing that I tell everyone, because everyone wants to jump on board. It's like, just make sure and think about that you want to blow up your sleeping pad every single night before you're going to bed. Most people do, but it's something you should just consider before you dive right into the highest rated, the $200 one. It's a lot easier to start with the $40 foam one and decide you want an inflatable one, because then you're just, you've got $40 sunk costs rather than realizing I hate blowing this up.
I will say that is my least favorite part of setting up and taking down camp. I'll set up my tent twice, whatever. Yep. But like inflating my pad, it's just, there's something about it that just bugs me. And then deflating it and rolling it.
Yep.
Not my favorite thing in camp. My least favorite, probably. And it's not even that it's that painful. It's like 2 to 4 minutes of effort. But have you trained yourself to sleep on your back? Is that how you can get away sleeping on that thing? Because I'm usually a side sleeper, and I'm like, man, my hips would be killing me.
It's usually on my stomach, actually. So the complete opposite. But yeah, if I'm going for, what I love about here is in 20 minutes, I can hike in 2 miles and camp for the night, and then hike out the next morning and be back here working by 7:30 in the morning in the summer. So if I'm doing something like that, I will take an inflatable pad. It's the endless every day blowing it up. Like you said, it just psychologically, I hate it way more than I should, because it's such a small chore to do. But that's the main reason that I go with foam.
That's crazy. Okay. And
then
so I like what you said about base weight. I'm kind of the same thing. I always try to carve my base weight to 10 pounds, but I'm totally happy hitting the trail with a 12 or an 11 pound base weight, meaning that I added 1 to 2 pounds of, quote unquote luxury items or things that were just going to make that trip better. You know what I mean? So that's typically where I sit too. But so trail runners, you're saying? Yeah,
trail runners, socks, I've tried everything. I don't know. They all work, I guess. They all work. Beyond that, just the
tiger shirt. right?
Tiger, anything that I got a unicorn one now, like anything, this is a big thing that I think we should
It's like your
embrace.
brand now, I think, right?
Yeah, well, tigers for sure, but even like at the end of a 100 miler last year, I put on a dress to run the last 8 miles. Like these are all like kind of stupid things we're doing with our free time. So you got to find something to embrace the fun in it. So I'll usually have some fun item or two in there, whether it's a cut off homemade sewn up tiger sweatshirt or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Your
think if there's anything
your
else special.
your trail name is Legend, right? I'm
Yeah.
surprised someone hasn't changed it to Tiger King or something. But where did Legend come from?
On the first thru hike I did in 11, at 20 years old, we were camped at Grassy Hollow Visitors Center outside of Wrightwood. And we made the massive mistake that every thru hiker hates, where you leave town and you didn't pack out like anything to eat that was good for that night. So you were just going to eat like ramen because you made a mistake. And so I volunteered to hitch back into town and get us pizzas. And everyone thought there was no chance since it was already getting dark and hitching's nearly impossible at dark. But I got picked up, went into town, picked up 2 pizzas and even some steaks to cook over the fire, and then hitched back up there and just walked in. I didn't even bring my pack, walked in Crocs and just my weird clothing or whatever I was wearing, and brought the pizzas, and they called it Legendary, and the name Legend stuck. And then
That's awesome.
One of my friends, still a friend to this day, was like, with a trail name like that, this can't be your only thru hike. So I hope he's proud that it didn't become my only thru hike.
That's what I was going to say, is it seems like that would have come from like an FKT attempt or just massive days on trail, but it seems like he just grew right into being legendary, right? So
apparently,
that's awesome. Speaking of legendary, in 2020, I believe, I might have the year wrong, you set the Colorado Trail FKT, which that's right around high 400s, 500 mile.
About 500, just under 500.
Massive elevation, climb and descend. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure. I mean, it's just insane out there. And you made a documentary about it. I watched the trailer. I'm super stoked for it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd actually been approached maybe a month before and by an executive producer about filming a pilot for a TV show. Long story short, we filmed it. He didn't pay the crew. I had to get a lawyer. It was a huge mess.
Oh my goodness.
But I'd become friends with all the crew. And so it was like, well, screw this guy. We can do this ourselves. So used what little money I had, and then had a producer that and everything. And we all just made this movie where I filmed myself out there. They filmed some of the trail. There was no communication between us throughout the whole thing. And we just made the whole thing was, if I'm doing this unsupported, I don't want any influencer contact from you guys. And I am not going to just interact with you guys either. Yeah.
Blinders up. Wow.
And then it's like this, well, I'm going to trust you guys are getting footage and stuff on your end, and you're going to trust that I'm getting enough on my end. And at the end of it, it all worked out and we had a movie. And so it took 2 years to edit and put together, and all these things that I had to learn, like get a sound guy and a colorist so that it's kind of theater quality, or hopefully ends up on a streaming service after this. But we made a movie. It premiered in Denver in November, and then we've shown it in 4 cities total, and then adding some more for this spring. So it's been a wild ride, and never set out to make a movie, but I never really set out to make a book, write a book or anything either. So I guess it just, if you don't try, it comes your way, and then it's a lot of work once it's on your plate.
Yeah, it is, right? It's so much work to make content, and especially when you're going for that level of quality, it's just another tier. But sounds awesome. I mean, I watched the trailer. I'm definitely looking forward to watching it. And then obviously, like, it's just cool to see an effort like that well documented, right? Like most people go out and do crazy stuff and it's like they get one or two, selfies on their phone and that's kind of it. So I think it's a really cool capture in the sense of what it is, like the subject, but then it looks like you guys got some awesome footage and some really raw footage, I would say, as well, as far as just you being yourself and catching it in the moment and some of that. So I think if you go, is it onto so you have a website called Free Outside.
Yep.
Can people see where that is showing?
Yeah.
Or are you done touring it at this point?
Yeah, we're adding dates. I think just added a Michigan date. But yeah, they'll all be up on freeoutside.com/film. And one more thing about the film is captured everything I did. And then the director, Dylan Harris, captured everything on the cruise side and everything. And then we brought on an editor, Jason Fitzpatrick, who put it all together. And my big goal was I don't want something that makes me look how I want. I want it to just look how it looked out there. Like, here's what happens.
Not like hero shots, not like Tom Cruise,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, just naturally looking like a tiger. There's enough hero shots out there. But yeah, it was like, it was all in Jason's hands of like, just make it look like how it is out there, because I don't know, I've done like 18 or 19 or 20 of these things. And here is the one chance to show off the crazy things that happen, like what you're doing out there, how time passes. And it's like probably the one chance to give some insight into an effort like this. So that was the whole genesis. And I think what's pretty cool about it is, I do get pretty weird out there, because that's what happens when you're out there for 9 days on your own. And I'm pretty proud of it, whether I cringe at how I am or not. It's all part of the experience, and it really happened.
I think I would hope that the people that are interested in that will be very understanding of like the conditions, right? So I'm really excited for that. I think the closest one to us was Flagstaff, and if I could jump across the Grand Canyon, I would totally drive down to it. But it's a few miles around. But when you do get it onto a streaming platform, definitely let us know, and we'll make sure to send it out on our social side as well. You've also, I was looking around on your website, a lot of really good resource there for people to go and look around and learn. And then you've also got a book. Just give us a quick hit on what is the book.
Yeah, I did the calendar year Triple Crown, the AT, PCT, and CDT in, I think it took me 8.5 months. And then someone after I finished said I should write a book. So I wrote a book, and that describes basically everything I've accomplished in life. Of
you got to sell this a little harder here.
You should do this. So I did. No, it's a funny, I don't know. I think it's a fun read of the highs and lows and kind of the between the ears of what happens out there when you have 8,000 miles to cover in 8 months and you're 25 years old. You don't have much money. You just quit your career that you've gone to college for, and you're on your first winter backpacking trip. So I started on February 5th, never backpacked in the winter. And on week 2, it snowed 2 feet on me. I had to learn not only how to backpack in the winter in the Smoky Mountains, but also how to figure out where the blazes are when they're covered in snow. And so it kind of continued from there. And there's a lot of highs and lows and plenty of mistakes. And so I like to say it's a pretty real look of what happens out there. And it's a lot different than some of the YouTube videos you see where it's, mostly triumphs over the most intense scenarios. There's plenty of low points up there as well, and plenty of moments where I'm wondering what I'm doing. So it's called just Free Outside. And if you're sensing a trend, there seems to be a trend with naming things.
That's awesome. Well, really appreciate the time that you've given us today, Jeff. Just wanted to give you one last chance to pitch anything as far as where people can connect with you, or just any last comments that we didn't hit on that you'd want to say.
I'd say, let me know on Instagram or wherever, where there's some good desire to see the film. Pretty in charge of setting up the tour. Probably going to do 8 to 10 more dates, probably like Salt Lake City and Seattle and maybe Flagstaff and Phoenix as well. But kind of piecing together where the best places to connect and show it in person, because it's pretty special to see the reactions to a film in a theater. And that's the whole reason for this style of doing it rather than just putting it up online right away, because it's cool to connect with people. And that's a big reason. And then, in the summer, I'm coming out with a meal I designed with ReadyWaz. So that should be pretty cool as far as backpacking meals. And then beyond that,
I'm excited to try their new stuff. I tried some of their old stuff recently, and I'm excited for the new stuff.
Yeah. So we just got a sample run of the new stuff at Outdoor Retailer like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was really good. So I'm super excited and impressed. And it's exactly where the bar was set when decided to go on this journey together. So I'm pretty excited that it's going to be some good stuff out there. And then, just Free Outside Everything or Jeff Garmire or wherever you want to find anything. And then the last words I would say is just, don't block out everyone else when you're setting your goals, because your 10 miles could be someone else's 100 miles and it doesn't really matter. It's really that self-fulfilling thing. And that's all goals should be. So I wouldn't use me as a metric or anyone else out there, because it's just, you're going to excel in different ways in life. So just find the goals that really make you happy and fuel you forward to pushing the envelope yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I could second that. I think the only comparison, even though I fall victim to this all the time, I think the only comparison worth doing in life is your past self to your future self, right? Mm-hmm. So wherever you're at, just build on your own trajectory, and you'll find a lot more happiness, I think, in life. So, okay, Jeff, I really appreciate it. We'll link a few things to your website, and then, like I say, when that video is out on just streaming channels as well, I'd love to push that out as well. But I look forward to seeing what you're up to this coming year, but also going back and watching that documentary. And make sure you guys go follow Jeff. He's definitely living a life full of adventure, and he's fun to watch. So thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for joining us on this podcast. That was a phenomenal interview. Really appreciate Jeff's time, and make sure to go look up Jeff and see his documentary when that does come out, as well as just follow along in other efforts he has going on. If you have any questions, make sure to reach out with those. You can leave a comment on YouTube where we can respond there, or you can reach out to liveultralightpodcast@gmail.com, and that will forward directly to us to answer in a future episode. If you haven't left us a review, hopefully a 5-star review, make sure to go do that. It helps us get the word out and inspire more people to get out into nature. With that, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you guys on a future episode.